Hi. All of a sudden it started, so I'm just going to start. This is lecture number 26. Greetings in the name of God and Jesus Christ. I bring you blessings, my dear friends. The last time I talked about the difficulty on this path and how dangerous it is to approach it, to decide for it with the illusion that with a few meditations and some miracle formula, all your earthly troubles will disappear. On the other hand, it is equally far away from truth to overestimate the difficulties on this path. And I can see that some of my friends became a little afraid, and this unjustified fear serves as an excuse for the lower self that always wants to avoid purification and improvement. Now, my dear friends, let us examine these fears you may have. Certainly, the path is difficult, but God is wise and just. And he or she will not give you more than you can bear, than you are able to accomplish. And that, of course, varies with each individual. The higher your development, the stronger you are, and therefore the more you can be expected of you. But if you are still weak, and perhaps the smallest effort will be sufficient for you. At any rate, no one can truly achieve happiness in this life if he does not accomplish, spiritually speaking, the maximum according to his destiny. And this path with my instruction and guidance should help you to this end. Therefore, the proper attitude for you to take if you happen to fear that this path is too much for you is that you put it into the hands of God. Let God decide for you. Ask God. But how very few people are doing this when the mood of doubt about this decision takes them over. Then you are all very quick to make your own decision, even though it may be a temporary one in many cases, that all this is too much for you, and that the thought does not even occur to you to ask God for help, to ask God and God's will in this respect. Another great misunderstanding in this respect is the mistaken idea that to follow the path I am leading you on to means that you neglect your life in other ways. You see, my dear friends, I can observe the forms of your thoughts and feelings. Your lower self that fights constantly against the right decisions delivers all sorts of excuses and pretexts, unbeknownst to yourself. Why you have these thoughts, what is really in the back of them. One may believe that devoting a certain amount of time and effort for your spiritual development will take too much time away from daily fights as far as his livelihood is concerned. He thinks he may not have enough strength left for the professional efforts, and thus his duties in connection with the earnings of his daily bread may suffer. Another may believe that not enough time remains to enjoy life, and so on and so forth. But all this is very wrong, for spiritual development in general, and this path in particular, are not an extra activity in your life that you may simply add on to, is not an extra activity in your life that you may simply add on to your other activities, thus making a mathematical deduction which diminishes your strength, time, effort, and zest that you would otherwise have available for all your other duties and pleasures. Actually, it is quite the contrary. It is quite the contrary, my friends. The truth is that this path of purification represents the foundation of your life. It is the ground you walk on, symbolically speaking. You simply shift the tracks of your life, if I may say so, into different channels. And this has then the effect, at least after a while, even though your main problems may not disappear from one day to the other, as I have explained to you, a new life spark awakens in you that furnishes you with the heretofore unfamiliar strength, acumen, vitality, and ability to enjoy life as you have never done before. Thus, you will do better work in your profession, you will get more rest from your time of leisure, and you will get more pleasure out of life, whatever you may do. I think that's pretty amazing. I've got this big smudge. You will get more pleasure out of life, whatever you may do. Wow, now all this is still more or less flat for most of you. This is the result I can promise you if you work spiritually in the way I am showing you. If not at once, so after a certain time, after some inner victories. And then you will see that this path is worth taking, even from your selfish point of view, even though your main conflicts have not disappeared as yet at this point. This is so because on this path you eventually find out where in your deeper feelings, your deeper reactions and thoughts, if not in deeds, you have broken many spiritual laws. By this realization, you will be in position to gradually change these inner currents and emotional reactions, and this automatically frees the strength and life force that was locked and blocked so far. So I'm not promising you a miracle that will be given to you as a reward from heaven, but I am showing you plainly and logically that it cannot help but work out in this way, because this is all based on the law of cause and effect that works quite naturally and impersonally. So you should not consider the decision for this path as some additional activity in your life, as you may consider to start taking lessons in some new accomplishment, for example. That may rob your time or effort for other necessary and desirable things, but it is the foundation of your life. It is supposed to make your life whole. It must make your life a well-integrated whole. For if you can solve your inner problems and your inner errors, you can only do so on this path, and you can only do so on this path. For if you can solve your inner problems, even though, as I have said last time, you should not expect this to happen from one day to the other, because you have often wasted many lives and the wrong habits of thinking and feeling have impregnated themselves deeper and deeper from one incarnation to another. The knots have become tighter and more confused, so it must take time to dissolve the knots, to loosen it up, to understand the workings of all the inner currents in relationship to spiritual law and truth. But when you have accomplished this to some degree, your outer problems must cease. But this will certainly not happen when you merely put more effort and concentration on the outer problem alone, instead of finding out the inner problem, which is always the cause of the outer one. By the same token, all the good things in life, happiness, joy, pleasure, you will get so much more out of them if your soul is becoming healthy again. If your inner reactions can conform to spiritual law, only then will you be capable of happiness. For how many people are capable of happiness? Very few. Very few, my friends. The majority is actually as scared of happiness as of unhappiness. I'll read that again. The majority is actually as scared of happiness as unhappiness. You desire great happiness, all of you, but further it is out of reach. Let me read that again. You desire great happiness, all of you, but the farther it is out of reach, the more desirable it seems to you. Well, if there seems a chance once in a while to actually realize such happiness, you shrink from it. Oh yes, my friends, this is so. Think back in your life, examine your feelings in these rare moments, analyze them from this angle, and you will see that I am right. This, of course, a symptom of the soul that she is sick, that she has deviated from one or more spiritual laws. For only he who embraces life wholeheartedly, without fear, without self-pity, without being afraid of hurt, follows a very important spiritual law. Let me read that again because that's intense. For only he who embraces life wholeheartedly, without fear, without self-pity, without being afraid of hurt, follows a very important spiritual law. And only he who can do so is capable of experiencing real happiness. So everything you do in life will have more flavor, will have more awareness, and life spark. And if you follow the path of self-knowledge and perfection, if you do what God wants you to do, and it will not take more time than is reasonable according to your life circumstances, everybody without any exception is capable, with a little willpower and determination and the proper organization in this everyday life, to spend, let us say, in the average of half an hour a day for his spiritual development. You spend your time on your physical body, you feed it, you rest it, you cleanse it. You certainly do not feel that this takes away from anything, from your other duties or pleasures. You naturally take it for granted that this is necessary, self-understood part of your life. Yet when the question arises to do the same for your soul, less time is necessary for the soul than for your body, then your fears, your doubts, your questions bar your way. But it cannot do so if you take the trouble to think about it reasonably, my friends. But you are not thinking reasonably about it because you do not think that these thoughts, you are not thinking reasonably about it because you do not think these thoughts for their proper merits. You rather think them because you are inspired by your own lower self. And as long as you do not recognize how this lower self works, how it manifests, in what devious ways it hides behind handy excuses, you will not be able to master it, the lower self, regardless of how sincere your love for God may be. Love for God is wonderful if it manifests in beautiful prayer and meditation, but the works have to be done too. What are these works? These are the works, my friends. You must master your lower self is the work that Jesus meant mainly. To do good to other people is also part of it. But can you really do good to other people as long as your impure currents force you into thinking things that are not according to the truth? No. You may be able to commit a good act and consider this a good deed, yet it is not really a good deed if it is not supported by purified feelings. And purified feelings are your goal on this path, for which you do not need more than a certain amount of time every day. And certain amount of willpower, and my friends, a certain amount of detached, reasonable, common sense thinking. So some of you have really made this wholehearted decision. Some of you have not. But for both groups, it is important to understand how to deal with the lower self that works in the subconscious mind and sends only subterfuges to the surface. Even for those of you who are really willing to walk this path of purification will have many fights with the lower self of yours on your way. Perhaps not anymore as far as taking this path on the whole is concerned, but about individual currents and trends which the lower self does not want us to part with. So it is important that you train yourself to understand what is underneath these doubts or fears that want to bring you off your path, or at least make it more difficult for you to gain the necessary self-understanding. So this is one factor, my dear friends, that you have to deal with in the first place and to keep in mind at all times. Learn to see through your doubts, your hesitancies. Learn to see through an occasional stubbornness and not want to understand something. And the more you realize your own person, your entire person, what you really are and who you are, and the easier it will become for you to overcome that in your lower self, which constantly draws you away. There are thoughts in some of my friends I could observe between the last lecture and tonight. Isn't it enough if I am a decent person? God loves us all. If I just try to be good and behave right, that should be sufficient. Why do I have to go through all this? No, my dear ones, it may be sufficient for some people, but do not ever forget that for anyone who is guided to hear this, there is also an obligation involved. And this obligation means that more is expected of you than just being what is commonly considered a decent person. Who does not harm other people? Let me read it again. So this obligation means that more is expected of you than just being what is commonly considered a decent person who does not harm other people. It is not as simple as all that, my friends, that the fulfillment of this obligation works out for your own good, because by overcoming your lower self, you free yourself of your own chains. It is something else again. It is something else again that I have discussed before and also in my previous lectures, but let us remain for the moment with the argument that I have observed among some of you that it should suffice if you are good and do not harm others. What constitutes harm to others? To harm someone else is not only to steal from him or to say ugly things behind his back or to kill or anything like that. You may harm another person by not having enough love. And no outer forceful kindliness will make up for this lack. For this lack will alleviate the fact that this love is still missing in your soul. You may harm another person by not having enough understanding, by being blind. For if you are blind to yourself, you are perforce blind to your surroundings. And all your faults, every single one, stands in the way to the unfoldment of pure love, insight, and understanding. And by that you harm others. Imagine the love of God, this marvelous light that lives in the soul of each individual. And the lower self stands in between you and this light and its effects it could have on your surroundings. So you do not only harm by actual bad deeds, not only by bad thoughts, not only by impure thoughts, but also by the omission of love and understanding that you are capable of having if you fulfill the maximum in this incarnation. And that means this manner of self-development. Not only that which is commonly called a fault is a hindrance for you, thus directly or indirectly it harms others, but also, for instance, your fears that you are not supposed to be a fault. Your fears, they are not supposed to be a fault. You do not realize that they cause great harm, not only in your life, but also in the life of others. Your fears also hide the light of love. Understanding the light of truth. So it is not only a matter of overcoming your character weaknesses. To overcome your own fears is of equal importance. And as long as there is fear in your heart, you harm other people. For you send out certain rays that have a very unsavory effect. Subconscious mind smells the fear of others all the time and is affected by it constantly. And you can only guard yourself against this fear emanation of others and your own negative reactions as a result. As a result, if you oust your own fear. For then you will consciously understand the fear of others and it will not harm you anymore. You will make your instinctive awareness, of it into an intuition that reaches your entire consciousness. But as long as you live instinctively, unknowingly, unaware of all these things, you are gravely affected, and thus you cause, in turn, bad effects on others. And there is a vicious cycle in motion that can only be broken if self-awareness and understanding about these facts is gained in sufficient degree. If this is not done, the fear of others reaching you increase your own fears. And this sets up a hard wall. I just instantly lost my place. It's so interesting. I wonder if it was my lower self. Okay, you can only guard yourself against this fear emanation of others and your own negative reactions as a result if you oust your own fear. For then you will consciously understand the fear of others and it will not harm you anymore. You will make your instinctive awareness of it into an intuition that reaches your entire consciousness. But as long as you live instinctively, unknowingly, unaware of all these things, you are gravely affected and thus you cause, in turn, bad effects on others. There is a vicious cycle in motion that can only be broken if self-awareness and understanding about these facts is gained in sufficient degree. If this is not done, the fear of others reaching you increase your own fears. This sets up a hard wall between you and your fellow creatures that eliminates all divine aspects to be spread from your own soul as well as from those of others. For there is nothing as contagious as inner currents, positive and negative ones. So do not believe that it is sufficient to be merely a decent person. This term varies greatly according to a person's overall spiritual development, what he or she is capable of delivering in fulfillment and purification. I mean, God evaluates differently with each individual. And furthermore, do not imagine that you do not harm anyone by simply refraining from the more obvious evil deeds. For as long as there is fear in your heart, you do harm. In subtle ways, in ways that are not obvious, but nevertheless just as effective. Now, my dear friends, I want you to think about all this, what I have said to you, and as I have already indicated last time with this course, I have started now. It is not sufficient, if you really want to follow this path, that you read this lecture just once after you have heard it. There should be sentences that you meditate on and read several times so that you gain enlightenment and deeper understanding about certain meanings. Do not just read it and forget it. Some of these sentences have deep meaning for you personally, and therefore it is important that you work with these lectures. You should not only take the respective last lecture to work within this manner, it may often be important and very necessary for you to turn back a few lectures if there was one particular point to deliberate on that you still have not quite digested a few lectures henceforth. You yourself will have to be the judge of that. I have promised to show you how you should go about starting an actual fact on this path. Now there are many ways. Each individual reacts differently, of course. I cannot give individualized personal guidance for this manner in which to work on this path in these general lectures, but I will give you certain basic facts by which you can go and sort of make up your own plan. You do not have to work according to my words to the letter. Certain details and how or in the element of timing may vary here and there. This may be all right as long as you keep the basic structures in mind. You all know it is imperative importance to gain self-knowledge. Now, how can this be done? The first step, of course, will be to think as objectively as you are capable about your own person, all your good qualities and all your faults. Write down a list, and I have often advised, because this writing down helps to compact, condensation and concentration of what you have found out so far and will prevent you from losing your grip over this knowledge. It will, black on white, shed perhaps a new light of understanding, and already a tiny little bit of detachment in your consideration of yourself will result. And later on, when you have gained further knowledge about yourself, about your subconscious trends, you will be able to combine certain factors of this first found knowledge if it is clearly and concisely expressed. After you have done this conscientiously, the next step would be to ask someone else who knows you very well to tell you what he or she really and honestly thinks about you. I know that this will take a little courage to do that. Consider this your first effort to overcome little of your pride. By doing so, you will have attained some victory that will already free you of your little inner chain. I would suggest, my friends, that all of you who are here, all of you who read these words, cannot be present in these sessions personally, but are also willing to walk this path, to get together with one another, one or two friends who have the same endeavor, who are interested in the same goal. If some of you who read these words cannot belong to this group here, or are all alone in the spiritual interest, thus wonder how to find the proper person to work with, I advise you, pray for guidance. In this respect, you will see what happens. For he who knocks and knows how to knock properly for the proper goods will be answered. And I can promise you, if your wish is sincere, you will be guided. As far as you, my friends, who are here are concerned, there should be no problem there, because even those of you who come here singly can always arrange to get together with one another, or another friend here and there perhaps can meet once a week and discuss things pertaining to your work on this path. For it is very important not to work quite alone in many ways. In the first place, there is a spiritual law, my friends, to be able to open up. To really open your heart to another person brings a spiritual help that you could not receive by yourself. You see, it is the law of brotherhood. For he who is always alone, no matter how hard he works, no matter how intelligently he reads or studies, no matter how much self-honesty he tries to have, becomes locked in a certain vacuum that bars a complete understanding and evaluation which automatically flows into him, if it is aired out to another soul. By remaining all alone, you violate the law of brotherhood in some subtle ways. And it also needs to be a certain amount of humility, which does not come easy at the very beginning, but that does become second nature after some time of fruitful cooperation with another person. To be able to talk openly about your difficulties, your weaknesses, your problems, as well as to receive criticism. That, of course, is equally healthy for the soul. But each of you who has tried already this opening up will confirm that by the mere fact of discussing a problem that you have kept to yourself for a long time, even without hearing good advice, it all of a sudden loses some of its sometimes over-magnified proportions, some of its fearful aspects, whatever it may be. By being yourself as you really are, at least with one person, with as few masks and defenses as possible at this time, you imbibe a very healthy medicine for yourself. And at the same time, you commit an act of love to the other person whom you help more by showing your own human weaknesses than by trying to appear superior. and your partner or co-worker will do the same for you. So try to organize this, each one of you who have not done so already. You will see after a while how helpful and fruitful this will be. It will give you food for thought. You will help each other, and you will learn a lot in brotherhood, in humility, and in detached understanding. And as far as asking for your faults is concerned, that of course may not always be possible to combine with the person you have chosen as your spiritual co-worker, because not all people who come here know each other very well, while your own friends or family may not have the same interests, but they will know you very well and can tell you more about yourself than your newfound friends here. So my advice is to ask those who know you really well, even though they may not have the understanding for a spirit, trance sessions, mediums, etc. No matter what they believe, they will respect you for your sincere endeavor to improve, to learn about your faults, to be able to listen to them if you ask in the right way. Merely explaining to them that four eyes often see more than two, that you want to get to know yourself in order to improve, and that you will not be hurt or angry with them, even if they say something that will seem unjust to you. And you know, my friends, it is possible that by doing just that, you may open a door to the very people who you have hoped to convince that you were unable to convince by merely lecturing them, by trying to prove a truth that they cannot see as yet. And when they do tell you your faults, think about it calmly. And I may tell you, it may often be the case that someone says something to you that at the first moment seems entirely unjust, and it may hurt you. You may also, for that matter, be even more hurt if a truth is told to you. But even if you have the sincere conviction that something told to you is an injustice, try to think about it nevertheless. There may be only 1% of the truth in it, and the other person may just see it a little differently or just superficially affect. He may not have the understanding to combine or understand what lies underneath and why you react in this way, and all the complicated mechanisms of the soul and her workings, or he or she may not choose the right words to express what he really means. But the 1% of truth in what is said to you may open a new door of understanding for you. It may not even be something entirely new for you, but it is often necessary to consider one and the same fault or trait in different lights from new angles so as to understand the various effects one and the same fault may have. So when you make your daily prayer and meditations, this is where you should concentrate upon. Perhaps it is better for you to presently devote less time and concentration on general deliberations, but ask God for help to recognize yourself in truth without the distorted view of the self generally reserved for the self. Ask God for inspiration for the right reaction, enlightenment about yourself. Ask for help to receive unpleasant truth from others in the right and productive way. If you start in this way, you have made a very good beginning. And if you take all the faults you are beginning to realize more and more clearly in this manner into your daily meditation, and if your wish is truly sincere, you have made the best beginning imaginable. And my dear friends, if you do that, train yourself to observe your own inner reactions, and when you deal with the unpleasant in you. This is of the utmost importance. I have begun this lecture by saying the lower self constantly resists your endeavors. Here, for instance, you have a wonderful opportunity to observe your lower self clearly and undisguised as it works and reacts. Try to watch it as you would a third person. Try to be a little less involved in it. Try to put a little distance between your powers of self-observation and the reaction of your lower self, your ego, your hurt, your vanity that is involved when you are dealing with the unpleasant side of your personality. And by recognizing thus your own reactions and understanding them, knowing they come from and perhaps humoring them a little, not taking yourself so deadly serious in this respect, thus you will gain another step on the ladder. Oh my God. But again, I must admonish you, do not expect this from one day to the other. It means constant work. After some time of regular work, each day, let us say only half an hour of this type of work, you will make progress. You will come to the point when you feel quite clearly this distance between you and your hurt little ego. You can humor it a little and not be so very much in it. And when you have accomplished this, then the door will be open for further self-understanding. So this might be a very good way to begin, my dear friends. Those of you who have not found as yet the proper co-worker, as I may call it, pray for guidance and you will be helped. And then get together once a week and tell each other what you have accomplished so far, where you still have difficulties, what your inner reactions are, and perhaps plan together what pertinent questions you may ask in the next general session here. This will also mean a great deal of joy to you, and also begin by making your own inventory. After you've done your best in this respect, then ask someone who knows you well. Compare this with your own findings and complement the list. Elaborate on this. Take all this to God in your daily prayers to help you further. This is a wonderful beginning for everyone. And these efforts will not be in vain. This I can promise you. If you do every day some of this work, plus meditating on some of the pertinent words I am giving here, each day a little bit, then you will certainly be successful. And long before actual results can happen in your life, you will often have a feeling of deep contentment and peace that only a person can have who does what God expects him to do. When you have a very good day, a day when you are feeling strong, alive, and full of enthusiasm, then it is much easier to find contact with God and his truth in yourself. Consider these days as a source of strength that you gather for the more difficult times that may follow again alternately. But what is most important are the days when you feel low and discouraged and doubtful. Then it becomes more important that you know how to fight and not to give in to these moods. Choose particularly these days to read what I am saying here and consider it and take it to God. It is the most difficult for human beings to form the right thoughts at the right moment. This is the training in itself. It does not take a lot of time and effort to have the proper thoughts and proper time. It really is nothing else but a habit that has been formed. So if you are low and discouraged, do not give in so easily. If you are feeling like giving up, then take these words on this very subject and study them. Ask God for proper understanding and light in this moment. Perhaps make a mark on your copy of the lecture and put it in a certain place where it is easily available. Then, if you are still in doubt, ask God for truth that will work for you. Ask Christ to help you to be receptive for it. Pray, Father, is this thy truth? Is this thy will for me? I am open to receive thy answer. Nothing more is demanded when you are in doubt, my friends. But if you do this sincerely with your whole heart and disregard the resistance of your lower self that always lurks nearby in these moments, then you have gained a major victory. This I want to impress upon you. Take it with you tonight at the first actual and concrete beginning. Take it with you tonight as the first actual and concrete beginning of this path. Before turning to your questions now, I just want to mention once more, everything you suffer from your life, in your life, my friends, results directly and indirectly from your shortcomings and from your fears. If you would not have any shortcomings, there could not be any fear in you. The fear that makes you so miserable, the fear that must make you blind to the joys of life. Remember that. It is your own power to break the chains of fear by following this path. It is only in your power. It is only in your power, in your hands. And if you wish it, you will receive the necessary strength. No matter how busy you are in your life, you will have time, not only to fulfill your duties, as you have done before, but infinitely better. And you will have time to enjoy life, but infinitely better too, when you lose the fear and insecurity that constantly lives in your soul and spoils everything for you so much, my dear ones. And do not think you will not have the strength to do necessary work on this path. This strength will be given to you, drop by drop, for all your needs, spiritual and material, if you first make the decision for it. Trust God that he or she, God for me is a she. Okay. Trust God that God will give you what you need for it. Now, my friends, I am ready. Are you ready?